Everyone says the good guys win. But look around, do they? The world is not ruled by the kind, the honest, the selfless. It's dominated by those who know how to play dirty without getting their hands dirty. And centuries ago, Niccolo Machiavelli exposed exactly why. He didn't try to sugarcoat power, he unmasked it. And what he found was this: the worst people, the cunning, the ruthless, the strategic, often rise faster, last longer, and control more than anyone else. Not because the world is broken, but because the world rewards something very different than goodness results. We're told to be kind, fair, and vulnerable, to win people over with honesty. But Machiavelli warned, if you believe that virtue alone leads to power, you've already lost. He saw with terrifying clarity that politics and morality do not coexist. In fact, they often work against each other. The man who tries to be good in all things, he wrote, will be ruined by those who are not. And history, ancient and modern, has proven him right again and again. The people who rise are not the ones who play fair, they're the ones who play smart. Why do the worst people succeed? Because they understand one thing the rest avoid: appearances are more powerful than reality. The ruthless pretend to be righteous. The manipulators know how to speak of peace while preparing for war. Machiavelli exposed this tactic long ago: appear virtuous, act strategic. It's not deception for deception's sake, it's survival. The world is not ruled by truth, it's ruled by perception. And those who control perception control everything. The good try to be transparent. The strategic learn to be selective. The good wait for permission. The strategic move first, apologize later, if at all. That's what Machiavelli meant when he said a ruler must learn how not to be good. Not always, not recklessly, but when necessary. And those who refuse to do so are eaten alive by those who will. You've seen it in politics, in business, in your own life. The one who climbs is rarely the one who deserved it most. It's the one who took what others hesitated to claim. There's a painful truth that Machiavelli forced the world to confront. People are not moved by goodness. They are moved by strength, by boldness, by control. The average man is ruled not by logic, but by desire and fear. And the so-called worst people, the successful manipulators, the unshakable liars, the quiet tacticians, they understand this. They speak to instinct, not ideals. They don't waste time appealing to the conscience. They target the results, and the masses follow, not because they are blind, but because they want to be led. You've been taught that playing fair earns you loyalty, but Machiavelli taught that loyalty bought by fairness is weak. The first moment it becomes inconvenient, it vanishes. Real power, durable power, is built on necessity, not affection. It's better to be feared than loved, he wrote, if you cannot be both. Because love is a gift, fear is a structure, and the worst people, they build structures, while the rest of the world builds dreams. This is why those who seem the most ruthless often achieve the most, because they are willing to do what others won't, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. They do not waste time chasing admiration. They chase leverage. They do not wait to be liked. They position themselves to be needed. Machiavelli saw that true influence comes not from being harmless, but from being dangerous, and choosing when to show it. The man who is feared, but not hated, holds more sway than the man who is adored, but disrespected. And the worst people often master that line. Watch how they move. The winners in this world rarely explain themselves. They don't justify, apologize, or seek understanding. They act. And if questioned, they offer one thing: outcome. That's what Machiavelli understood. Results silence criticism. Results erase resentment. Results become the story that no one dares to rewrite. When you succeed, the methods are forgotten. When you fail, even your morality is questioned. So those who succeed, even if called the worst, are often remembered not as villains, but as leaders. And so the cycle continues. The good man struggles, hoping the world will notice. The strategic man adapts, knowing the world will not. This is not a call to become evil. It's a call to see clearly, to stop pretending the world rewards virtue for its own sake. Machiavelli never said you must be cruel. He said you must be willing to do what must be done when the time calls for it. And in that rare willingness lies the reason why the worst people, or rather the least restrained, often rise the highest. They don't rise by accident. The so-called worst people who keep winning, they rise because they understand the architecture of power. They don't waste energy trying to fix a system built on perception. They exploit it. Machiavelli exposed this long ago. Power, he said, is not for the moralist. It is for the one who understands men, not as they should be, but as they are, weak, impulsive, fearful, driven by comfort, survival, and image. And once you understand that, the game changes. You stop expecting fairness. You stop demanding justice. You start seeing what actually works. This is why charm beats competence, why boldness beats honesty, why cruelty, when used with precision, often beats kindness, because the average person doesn't know how to interpret strength unless it's dramatic. Subtle goodness is ignored, but calculated dominance? That becomes gospel. The worst people don't ask for influence. They take it, one move at a time. Machiavelli didn't admire them for their morality. He studied them for their efficiency. And in every case, the pattern was clear. The ones who knew how to manipulate perception always outperformed the ones who waited to be recognized. There's a reason political monsters last for decades, while idealists are chewed up and forgotten. It's because the worst people are never confused about what they want. They do not ask, is this fair? They ask, will this work? And more often than not, it does, because they're playing a different game, a quieter one that rewards consistency over virtue, one that punishes transparency and glorifies ambiguity. And while others post their plans, explain their motives, and wait for applause, the wolf is already in position. Machiavelli understood the theater of leadership. He knew that people don't follow who's right. They follow who looks right. That's why the worst people succeed, because they construct the illusion of strength. They dress it, speak it, amplify it, and in a world obsessed with certainty, people will follow the strong, even if they're wrong, just to escape the discomfort of doubt. This is not cynicism, it's realism. And if you want to thrive in that world, you must learn to separate your feelings from the facts. The truth is simple. Goodness does not scale. In small doses, it inspires, but the world is not ruled in small doses. The worst people scale because they remove emotion from their strategy. They are not burdened by guilt. They do not hesitate. They don't need to be liked. They need to win, and so they do, again and again. Not because they are lucky, but because they are cold, clean, and focused on what moves the lever, not what makes them feel better. Machiavelli warned that those who let their conscience govern every action often become governed by those who don't. And still we ask, why do these people succeed? Because they are willing to do what others rationalize away. They exploit the weak spots of society, its obsession with appearances, its hunger for leadership, its fear of silence, and instead of offering truth, they offer something stronger, control. The worst people don't win because they are evil. They win because they understand that most people want to be led, and they fill that vacuum without apology. They also understand the economy of emotion, where others waste energy trying to be understood. The worst people weaponize misunderstanding. They let others talk. They let others assume. They let the crowd fill the silence with projections, fear, hope, anger, all while they remain still, calculating. Machiavelli called this the art of ambiguity, the ability to say little, reveal less, and allow others to guess wrong. That guesswork creates power. It builds mystique, and mystique makes people hesitate. In a world that runs on impulse, the one who causes hesitation wins. You'll hear people say, "But that's manipulation." And they're right. It is. But manipulation, in the Machiavellian sense, is not immoral. It's a tool, like language, like timing, like silence. The worst people simply use all tools, not just the noble ones. They understand that the battlefield of life does not reward those who play with a limited arsenal. If persuasion works, they use it. If fear works, they use that too. Their only loyalty is to effectiveness, and because of that, they rise faster and stay longer than anyone else. So if you're wondering why the world seems upside down, why the worst people keep getting ahead, it's because they've accepted something most people deny. The world is not fair. It's functional. It rewards action, not intent, control, not compassion. And while goodness may be admired, it is rarely obeyed. The sooner you accept this truth, the sooner you stop losing to those who already have. There is one truth that few dare to admit. Most people are not searching for what's right. They're searching for what works. And the worst people, as society calls them, understand this perfectly. They do not waste time aligning their image with purity. They align their actions with outcomes. And Machiavelli, centuries ago, laid the blueprint. He saw that power is not maintained by kindness, but by competence. Not by sincerity, but by control. The men who rise to the top are not the ones with clean hands. They are the ones with steady ones. You have seen it. The ones who bend the rules or rewrite them are never short of followers. Why? Because they move with certainty. And in a world full of confusion, people will cling to certainty, even if it's dangerous, especially if it's dangerous. The average man doesn't want to lead. He wants to feel safe. And the worst people, as Machiavelli pointed out, offer safety, but on their terms. The cost: freedom, truth, transparency. But most people pay it without hesitation, because comfort always sells. This is why fear is more effective than love. Machiavelli never said love was useless, only that it was unstable. People fall in and out of love, but fear holds. Fear disciplines. Fear sustains order. The worst people understand this better than anyone. They don't need to be loved. They need to be obeyed. And in silence, behind the polished exterior, they craft systems, economic, social, political, that reward dependence and punish rebellion. They don't threaten loudly. They make it so that stepping out of line costs more than compliance. And they do it without apology. The strategic man, Machiavelli wrote, must be willing to act against mercy, against faith, even against humanity, if those actions preserve his power. This isn't brutality for sport. It's cold calculus. It's the recognition that survival at the top demands sacrifices that the good are often unwilling to make. That's why the good are often used by the powerful, because the good hesitate. They deliberate, they seek consensus, but the worst people, they decide, then they move. And by the time others react, the damage or the victory is already done. Their advantage isn't just ruthlessness, it's detachment, emotional detachment from the things that weigh others down. Guilt, doubt, hesitation. Machiavelli saw this in the great rulers of his time. He admired Sauvage not because he was moral, but because he was effective, because he was feared without being hated, because he removed threats before they became problems, because he understood that leadership is not about being liked, it is about being obeyed. And if you must choose between the two, obedience wins every time. You may ask, but doesn't this make them monsters? Perhaps. But the world does not punish monsters. It often promotes them. It gives them the microphone, the office, the crown. Why? Because they are useful, because they know how to keep order, because they create results when others offer only ideals. And Machiavelli would argue, it is not the monster who is dangerous, it is the man who refuses to acknowledge that monsters rule. The ones we call The worst succeed, not in spite of the system, but because they understand it better than anyone else. They do not cry for justice. They define it. They do not seek approval. They manufacture consent. They do not wait for the tide to shift. They redirect the river itself. Machiavelli warned us. He who waits for the world to be fair will find himself devoured by those who never expected it to be. The strategic man does not resist the game. He masters it, and in doing so, he becomes untouchable. This is why they're always 5 steps ahead, while others are caught up in the emotion of the moment, arguing, moralizing, defending. The worst people are building alliances, securing resources, eliminating threats, quietly, decisively, without fanfare. And when they act, it looks effortless, but it is not. It is rehearsed, refined, ruthless. You think they got lucky. But luck, as Machiavelli said, governs only half of life. The other half, that belongs to virtue, boldness, skill, and adaptability. The worst people win, not because they are lucky, but because they are prepared. And you, if you wish to stop losing to them, must understand this. You must study them, not to become them, but to stop being blind to how they move. You cannot defeat what you will not name. You cannot rise if you're still playing by rules they don't even recognize. The game is rigged, not against the good, but against the naive and the worst people. They wrote the rules. The rise of the worst is not a glitch in the system. It is the system. Machiavelli didn't romanticize power. He revealed its skeleton. Strip away the speeches, the handshakes, the campaign slogans, and what remains is this: power favors the ruthless strategist over the righteous dreamer. Again and again. Not because people admire cruelty, but because they admire control. They want someone to make the decision they are too afraid to make. And the so-called worst people understand this. They do not lead by example. They lead by dominance. This is why weakness, even perceived weakness, is punished so brutally. Because in a world where power is the currency, mercy is interpreted as a lack of means. Transparency is mistaken for desperation. The person who explains too much, defends too quickly, hesitates too often, becomes prey. The worst people don't flinch. They speak last. They move fast, and they never apologize for staying ahead. Because they know every time you slow down to explain yourself, someone else is already taking what you thought you had. They use morality as a mask, not a guide. Machiavelli taught that virtue is for display, not for direction. Appear just, speak of fairness, perform empathy when needed, but never let those performances compromise the mission. The worst people master this duality. They know how to present the image of integrity, while operating with a code far more efficient: win first, apologize never. They don't care if you call them evil, because while you're calling them names, they're calling the shots. And it works, because people are far more comfortable with a confident villain than a hesitant hero. That's the great irony. The crowd fears tyranny, but it follows certainty. The man who acts with authority, who doesn't blink under pressure, who never asks permission, he becomes irresistible to a public starving for direction. Machiavelli saw it in his time. We see it now, and the worst people, they know it intuitively. They don't need your love, they just need your submission. And most people hand it over willingly. This is why public opinion bends around power. The villain who wins becomes a legend. The tyrant who builds an empire is remembered as a leader. History does not record intentions, it records outcomes. And the worst people understand this. They play the long game. They can tolerate being hated today if it guarantees control tomorrow. The good want to be liked. The strategist wants to be remembered. And in that difference lies the gap between influence and irrelevance. It's not that these people are invincible. It's that their competition is emotionally unarmed. They face opponents who hesitate, who seek consensus, who reveal their moves before making them. And so they exploit that softness. They bait reaction. They create pressure. They set traps made not of force, but of expectation. and their enemies walk into them willingly. Machiavelli called this the difference between the lion and the fox. The lion brings force, the fox brings cunning. The worst people, they bring both. The fusion of boldness and cunning makes them unstoppable. They do not swing wildly. They calculate. They do not waste energy on battles they cannot win. They shift the terrain instead, and when the moment comes, they strike with such precision that others mistake it for luck. But it isn't. It's design. It's years of watching, waiting, and removing every obstacle that stood between them and the throne. Machiavelli admired this kind of mastery, not because it was pretty, but because it worked. And in his eyes, that was justification enough. This is what separates them. The worst people do not confuse emotion with strategy. They do not fight for ideals that won't serve them. They fight for position, for leverage, for longevity. They are not caught in the illusion that being good is enough to protect them. They know the world doesn't reward purity, it rewards power. And so, while the well-meaning hold on to their morals, the strategist moves forward, cloaked in charm, armed with ruthlessness. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince as a warning. He wrote it as a manual, a map for those willing to do what others won't. And those who read it, truly read it, came away with an uncomfortable truth. The world doesn't belong to the best people. It belongs to those who understand how to appear good while doing what must be done. The worst people don't succeed despite their darkness. They succeed because they've learned to hide it behind light. There comes a point when you stop asking why the worst people win and you start asking how they keep getting away with it. The answer is simple. They don't play defense. They control the frame before anyone can accuse them. They've already reshaped the narrative. Before opposition can gather, it's already fractured. The worst people, the most successful manipulators, never wait to be judged. They preempt the judgment. They define the battlefield, the language, even the terms of the debate. And by the time others realize what's happening, it's over. They've already won. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. He wrote that a ruler must not only learn how not to be good, he must also learn how to anticipate threats and eliminate them before they grow. That's what the worst people do. They don't react. They preempt. They don't defend their character. They attack your certainty. They create confusion, not to deceive for deception's sake, but to disarm. In a fog of uncertainty, the loudest and most confident voice becomes the truth. And they always make sure that voice is theirs. And what do the good people do? They hesitate, they explain, they try to reason. But reason does not move the masses. Dominance does. The worst people create symbols, enemies, slogans. They make people feel. They exploit fear, and then offer themselves as the antidote. It's not that they're brilliant. It's that they're ruthless where others are sentimental, and that ruthlessness wrapped in the illusion of competence becomes authority. You might think people would see through it, but Machiavelli reminded us, most people are not driven by truth. They are driven by appearances. They judge by what they can see, not what they cannot. The worst people understand this law of human nature, and so they craft their image carefully. They speak like saviors. They dress like visionaries. They act with total certainty, and when others doubt, that certainty, no matter how dark, becomes magnetic. It creates order in chaos. It becomes something the crowd can follow, and follow, they do. Watch the pattern. The worst people often rise in times of crisis, when people are afraid, angry, unsure. That's when morality becomes optional. That's when strength becomes a drug. Machiavelli wrote that men are quick to change their ruler when they believe they can benefit from the switch. The worst people offer a promise, not of virtue, but of control, not of goodness, but of victory. And the masses accept the trade, again and again. It is not logic, it is instinct. It is the ancient desire to feel protected, no matter the cost. And once they have power, they don't relinquish it politely. They entrench. They punish disloyalty. They reward silence. They create systems where speaking out becomes dangerous, not just for the speaker, but for everyone around them. This is not accidental. This is designed. The worst people don't just rise. They stay, because they understand that power must be preserved through fear, not gratitude. Gratitude fades. Fear doesn't. This is why they surround themselves with the loyal, not the competent, because loyalty can be bought, but competence can become competition. Machiavelli saw this clearly. A ruler must be feared by his circle more than he is loved by it. The worst people reward obedience, not brilliance. They crush dissent early, not because it is dangerous now, but because it could become dangerous later. And in doing so, they create an environment where no one dares to challenge them. The good man may wait for betrayal to act. The strategist acts before betrayal has a chance to form. You've seen this at every level, from global politics to personal relationships. The manipulator who isolates you before you even realize you've been cornered. The executive who promotes mediocrity because brilliance is a threat. The partner who uses guilt, charm, and silence to control without raising their voice. These are not accidents. These are tactics. And while others call it evil, Machiavelli would call it effective, because it works. And what works in a world ruled by outcomes will always win. And so the pattern repeats. The worst people win because they understand power is not about being right. It's about being first, being clear, and being untouchable. They play a game most people don't even realize exists. And by the time you understand the rules, they've already rewritten them. If that terrifies you, good. It should, because fear, as Machiavelli knew, wakes people up faster than hope ever could. If you're still hoping the world will reward your goodness, you haven't been listening. The truth is harsh, but it's liberating. The world doesn't care who's kind, it cares who's competent. It bows not to those with the cleanest hearts, but to those with the strongest hands. The worst people win because they stop pretending otherwise. They understand that morality is optional, but power is not, and they act accordingly, with precision, with discipline, and without apology. Machiavelli never told you to become evil. He told you to stop being naive. He told you to see clearly, to stop believing that intentions outweigh results, that words matter more than timing, that transparency is more valuable than leverage. The worst people understand this instinctively. They build their power in the shadows while others perform their virtue in the light. And when the time comes, it's not the virtuous who prevail, it's the prepared, because the real world does not punish darkness, it punishes weakness. The ones who succeed are not the purest, they're the most adaptable, the ones who shape perception, not chase it, the ones who can stomach being misunderstood, even hated, so long as the objective is reached. And when the dust settles, they're the ones left standing, not because they were liked, but because they couldn't be stopped. This is the final lesson. Stop waiting for fairness. Stop hoping the world will wake up and reward the better man. It won't, but it will reward the sharper one, the more ruthless one, the one who studies the terrain, sees the flaws in others, and builds without permission. The one who knows that in this world you are either using power or being used by it. The reason the worst people always succeed is because they understand that power is not given, it's taken, earned not through virtue but through control, sustained not through applause but through fear, loyalty, and leverage. They don't need the world to see their soul, they just need the world to obey. And when others hesitate, they move. When others doubt, they strike. When others explain, they win. So you have a choice. You can continue believing in the myth of meritocracy, that the world is a fair arena where the good always rise, or you can open your eyes, see what Machiavelli saw, learn how they move, how they think, how they win, and then ask yourself, do I want to play the game or keep losing to those who do? Because the game is real, and whether you choose to play or not, the worst people already are. If you've made it this far, You're not like most. Most people would have clicked away. Most people can't stomach the truth, that power is rarely pure, and that those who rise are not always those who deserve to. But you stayed, which means a part of you is done being fooled. A part of you is ready to stop pretending and start seeing clearly. Now tell me, are you ready to be called cold, misunderstood, even feared? Are you willing to be strategic in a world that rewards performance over purity? If this message reached you, if it resonated, write in the comments, "I see the game." Let's see how many here are no longer playing blind. And don't stop here. The next video is crucial, because once you see the truth, you need to know how to use it, watch it, learn it. Remember, in a world that rewards dominance, silence, and control, those who adapt survive, and those who dominate rule.